I'm going to start this morning with a scripture from the book of Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Would you bow your heads and join me in prayer? Almighty God, we're so grateful to stand here, to sit here, and honor your servant, Robert J. Dole. We're so grateful to have been a part of his life. We pause for a moment. We lift up his family, his lovely wife Elizabeth, his wonderful daughter Robin, and all of his staff members who are so much like family to him. Touch their hearts. Help us to remember him today in prayer. We're so grateful for your gift of salvation and the hope that you've given us all, so that none of us will ever walk alone. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us to honor a true Kansan, a once-in-a-generation iconic figure from the greatest generation. Obviously, this is a very special place, a place that wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for Senator Bob Dole, who was a force behind raising the money as well as making this dream of his come true, to honor that greatest generation and all the men and women who served us in World War II. I'm sure everybody here recalls and knows that most every Saturday he spent the morning here welcoming those folks on the honor flights and welcoming any veteran that was in town. And all of us members of Congress had joined him at least once or twice or 10 times here as we recognize those soldiers from Kansas who came in for honor flights as well. And it was very unusual that Bob Dole wouldn't beat us to the welcoming spot. This podium, I would point out, was used by Bob Dole in the 1996 campaign. One more blessing that we've got to share and help remember one of the greatest Kansans. Bob Dole instilled upon all of us something special. But what I'll always remember is every time I saw Bob Dole, every time I heard him speak, he would say, "Remember where you're from. Remember where you're from." If you look around this room, this World War II memorial, the senators in the room, the Congress members, all of us, I think, are from a small town, a small community, where faith was and is important, where family's still important, where a sense of community is still important, and we still all value education and parents' involvement in that education as well. And those were all priorities for Senator Bob Dole. I think he talked about remember where you're from because he and all of us realize that pride is a great sin. And when you think of where you're from, you think about the people who got you here. You think about your parents and your grandparents, and for me, my aunts and uncles and the coaches and the teachers, the people who got us here. And Bob Dole never forgot where he was from. Next, I'd like to welcome to the podium the former commander of Fort Riley, my friend, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, General Joseph Martin. He served as commanding general of the 1st Infantry Division from 2016 to 2018. He also deployed and commanded the Combined Joint Force Land Component Command and Operation Inherent Resolve. Please join me in welcoming General Joseph Martin.
Good morning, everybody. It's my honor to be here today. I am a son of the state of Kansas. I grew up in Michigan. My mother was born and raised in Missouri, and Topeka, Kansas. Spent most of her young life there, and so I've got roots in Kansas, and I'll have roots forever in this division right here, where I served 3 times in combat as a commander in the 1st Infantry Division. But we're not here to talk about me today. I want to give you a sense of where we're standing right now, and you can read it in much more articulate words on the plaque that's behind there, but it's very moving. The location of this monument was picked for a specific reason. because we've got a monument that's in that direction to the east that recognizes the founder of our country. We've got a monument that's in the west over there that recognizes the preserver of that country. And surrounding a reflecting pool in between the two, you have monuments for those dedicated to those who sacrificed so greatly to protect this nation, to fight tyranny, to seek justice in the world on the behalf of not only the American people, but the people around the world. And Bob Dole is absolutely a representative of the millions of Americans who fought for and sacrificed in World War II right here. Now, if you've ever read his bio, and if you haven't, I commend it to you. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I will tell you there's some important things to understand. He is the epitome of sacrifice in World War II. Gave up what he was doing like the greatest generation did. Everybody did that. He was severely wounded and was told he would never walk again or use most of his arms during the rest of his life. He never quit. He kept on. He went through multiple surgeries. He was able to recover from those surgeries. But his service to this nation wasn't over. As the senator talked about, served for 36 years in Congress, and 100% of his efforts were advocating for those who could not advocate for themselves, regardless of race, gender, background, didn't matter. Equal treatment is what he advocated for. And for that, we should all be grateful. It's my honor to be here with you today. God bless Bob Dole, his family, and this great nation. Senator Moran, sir.
General Martin, thank you for joining us. We do consider you a full-fledged Kansan, and we appreciate your service to the nation. And Senator Marshall, Roger, thank you very much for organizing and encouraging us to get together, mostly as Kansans today, in this special opportunity for us to gather in remembrance and honor of Bob Dole, a role model, I have no doubt, for everyone gathered here this morning. Senator Dole is known in Washington, D.C. In so many ways for his legislative accomplishments, for his service as a congressman, as a senator, as the majority leader, as a presidential candidate, the political side of his life. We gather at the World War II Memorial today, and I would just remind us of his military service, because I think that service is what then determined how Bob Dole conducted himself in Congress as a candidate, as a presidential candidate, as a vice presidential candidate. And the things that I think about, and I don't know this, but as I have admired and watched the life, studied the life of Bob Dole, military service, his tragedy, his horrific injuries in Italy resulted in the things that made him who he was and why he's so respected and admired. Certainly the injury, the recovery, the response. Let me start with going to the VA hospital in Michigan. And there he was surrounded by other veterans in similar circumstances, which gave him an understanding of people who suffered. And ironically, perhaps fortuitously, maybe by fate, there is Senator Inouye. Later to be Senator Inouye. There is later to be Senator Hart. And those folks who served in World War II and recovered together, they looked at life differently than anyone else ever did, and it determined the nature of Bob Dole's working with others to accomplish the goals that he set forth in his legislative and political career. If you serve with somebody in the Army, you serve with somebody in the military, you then go to the VA hospital and recover together, it cannot help but change how you look at other people, and the question of whether they are a Republican or Democrat is absolutely irrelevant. And then the return. Quite frankly, the VA failed to continue to support Senator Dole in his recovery, but his hometown. The proverbial story that we've all heard, I've heard my whole life, about the cigar box in the drugstore where Bob Dole was the soda jerk in high school. And the money's raised, the nickels, the dimes, and the dollars, to help pay for the expenses of his care and recovery. How could you not leave that experience and know that Kansans are special? Know that your community cares and loves you, and how can you not then in your public service return the debt to those people who helped care for you? Bob Dole was an outstanding athlete, loved in his community, known for a high school student, worked hard, was known in town, and had a bright future. Roger, he wanted to be a physician, as you probably know. He wanted to be a star athlete at the University of Kansas. Those things were eliminated as options for his life because of that service. And so Bob Dole learned about other people and their service and sacrifice. He worked with them. He knows about the love and care of his Kansans, and that reflected the things that he is so well known for as a legislator. Americans with Disabilities Act, Food for Peace, service to veterans. Roger's right about Bob Dole being at this memorial on so many occasions, the memorial he created, and I thank him for that. My dad, a World War II veteran, saw this memorial, which would not have been here but for Bob Dole's efforts. So we pay respect to Bob Dole as the person, as the legislator, as the politician. But it originates because he was the serviceman answering the call of his nation. Shortly before this memorial was opened, I walked up here to see what it was going to look like, my days in the House. And I walked over to the Kansas column, and I stepped away from the memorial and called my dad at home in Plainville, Kansas, a World War II veteran, Northern Africa, Sicily, Italy. Bob Dole's mother called my grandmother when Bob Dole was injured to say, we know Ray is in Italy. Can your dad try to find, can Ray try to find Bob Dole and get us a message as to what has transpired, where he is and how he's doing? So I step away from the memorial and I call my dad back at home in one of those small towns of Kansas. And fortunately for me, I got the answering machine, because we don't say these things to our moms and dads, but I said, Dad, I'm at the World War II memorial built in your honor. And Dad, I want you to know that I respect you. I thank you for your service. And Dad, I love you. And I walk back to the office and my cell phone rings. It's my dad. And he says, Gerald. And yes, Dad. He said, you left me a voicemail, but I couldn't understand it. Would you repeat it? And I can't repeat it to my dad today. He's no longer living. But we can repeat it to all those who serve us now. We can repeat it to all those who served us in the past. And we can say it together collectively as Kansans, but perhaps more importantly as Americans. Bob Dole, we respect you. We thank you for your service. And sir, we love you.
Thank you, Senator Moran, Senator Marshall. Thanks for pulling this together. A lot of great Kansans that are here. Pretty amazing to see a lot of people. I know the staff, the people that work for Senator Dole. Incredible time. I'm glad we chose this place. When this memorial was dedicated, we brought my grandfather, who fought in World War II. He landed D-Day +6 from Johnson, Kansas, out here for the memorial. And so clear that this would not exist if it wasn't for Bob Dole and the tremendous impact that that weekend had on our family. I'll never, ever forget it, and will always be grateful to Senator Dole. Before I came out here Monday night, I'm tucking our kids in bed and I'm talking about the week. And I was telling the kids that, hey, we're going to spend a lot of time this week honoring this guy, Bob Dole. And I was telling the story of Bob Dole. And it's interesting. I was telling the kid a story about him being injured and almost dying, and then they said he'd never walk, and then he went on to walk and then to serve. And Austin, my son who's 8, he said, Dad, he said, God must have had a special plan for Bob Dole. And I thought, boy, that's true. And more than that, I think God had a special plan for all of us and the blessings that our state received and our country received from having Bob Dole. You know, he never forgot, and I think the legacy in many ways of Bob Dole is that he never forgot that he was a kid from Russell, Kansas. And he never lost sight of the fact that the heartbeat of the country is alive and well in places like Russell, Kansas, and throughout rural America. You know, an image that's very clear to me a couple years ago when there was all this kneeling at national football games by our athletes for the flag. People wouldn't stand for the flag. And here you have Bob Dole and that image of him getting out of his wheelchair to stand for the flag. Unbelievable. Tremendous legacy that he's given all of us. And so in many ways, so I really enjoyed here in September. A few weeks ago, I was able to go and meet with Senator Dole. And I'll say at that time he was active, upbeat. He wanted to know my plan for this. He wanted to know my plan for that. He wanted to know about Kansas. He wanted to know about agriculture. It just went on and on and on. And he left. He gave us 3 pieces of advice. He said, number 1, he said, treat people well. Number 2, he said, work hard. Number 3, never forget where you come from. And so may us all never forget that we're from places like Russell and Plainville and El Dorado and Leavenworth and Dodge City and Hutchinson, Galena, Osage, and places like Quinter. So, Senator Marshall, thanks for doing this. I think next up we have, Congressman Turner.
Good morning. Senator Marshall, thank you so much for putting this together. I'm really proud and honored to get to stand in for the over 700,000 Kansans that I represent that wish they could be here today to pay tribute to Senator Dole. Senator Dole was the personification of service. Growing up in Russell with the impacts of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, serving so honorably in World War II, receiving 2 Purple Hearts and the Bronze Star, dealing with the injuries and the recovery of that, going on to serve in the State House as county attorney in Congress and in the United States Senate, impacting tens of millions of people's lives that will never even know the impact that he had personally. And for him, certainly he has his name on meaningful legislation, but the impact from everyone you talk to and everything you read that he had on getting legislation passed that his name wasn't on at all, that no one would ever know how instrumental he was in getting things done and moving the ball down the field for Kansas, for our country. He set the bar so high, and may we all, every single day, remember him and do our best to live up to it. God bless Bob Dole. God bless you all. Happy to introduce Congresswoman Sharice Davis.
Good morning. Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to join you all this morning and to join my fellow Kansans who are here to celebrate and share some of the memories that are too many to put into one program, I'm sure. And then my heart goes out to his entire family, Elizabeth, and our state. Really, our entire state is suffering this loss because Senator Dole was absolutely a true statesman. And I think you're going to hear that time and time again from so many different people that he really was not just a giant in Kansas politics, but a giant in American politics and the culture of America. And General, I appreciate the words that you shared earlier, your service, and to all our service members. My mom served in the Army for 20 years. And she was stationed at Fort Riley. We were there when I was a pretty little kid, And then I was also, I graduated from Leavenworth High School because my mom retired from there. So for not just that reason, but that is definitely one of the reasons that I have so much respect and appreciation for Senator Dole, because it's not just the service members who serve, but as we heard, the family who has so much concern. And when Senator Dole was gravely injured, knowing that his family was able to reach out to Senator Moran's family is pretty. I'm really glad I got to hear that story this morning. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to share a couple of personal stories. One, as a newly elected member of Congress, Senator Dole called me to congratulate me, and I remember getting the chance to sit. First of all, I was very touched and surprised that I was getting a phone call from Senator Dole. I mean, it's surreal. And then when we got the chance to talk, I just remember being able to express my gratitude for his service to our country in so many ways. And then I'm going to end with a fun story, which is we got to see each other at a puppy adoption event that happens here on the Hill every year. The ASPCA does a puppy adoption event, and I think the chance to hang out with Senator Dole and puppies at the same time on the same day at the U.S. Capitol is, it's something that I get to tell people a lot, and it's just a fun thing that I wanted to share this morning because, Senator Dole and puppies, how can you go wrong? So thank you all so much for your love and appreciation for our state, for Senator Dole, and I will now turn it over to Congressman Estes.
Good morning. It is so fitting that we're here at the World War II Memorial having this ceremony in recognition of Bob Dole. Bob, he had a great life ahead of him as a young man. And World War II started, and like so many millions of others, stepped up and changed the direction of his life and hit it in a different direction. Obviously, with the injuries that he suffered during the war, formed a critical part of his life. What he did, how he did it, how he viewed the world, how he viewed individuals, how he viewed what he should deal and how he should deal with even bureaucracies like the Veterans Administration and helping support those veterans who've done so well. Some of my memories of Bob Dole are being here and meeting Honor Flight as they arrived. After the World War II Memorial was implemented and established, it's fun to see all the veterans come and these 80 and 90-year-old men acting like kids, when they get off the bus and to see Senator Dole's smiling face greeting them as they get off the bus is such a wonderful thing. My father, before he passed away, had the opportunity to come here on an Honor Flight trip, and it's one of those things that my father changed from not sure he wanted to come just because of the memories it would dredge up to ecstatic when he got back, and again acting like a kid, as you don't expect from an 80-year-old. One of the other things that I had the opportunity to do as I was state treasurer was to travel around the state, and when Bob Dole was doing some of his visits in counties and one of his or several of his many trips around the state, and it was great to see his interaction with his fellow Kansans. It wasn't that he could relate to them, that he had warmth, that he could communicate with them, but it was that he actually remembered them. He actually knew people. He actually knew their families. He could ask questions about their parents or what was going on in their home or around in the farm or in the community. And it was things that even if they'd happened years or decades ago, he could respond to. And that's why people admire and respect him so much. I just want to close in saying that, Bob Dole's a giant in American history, and we should all strive to be as great a citizen as he has been. Now I'd like to introduce former Congressman Kevin Yoder.
Well, good morning, everybody. Senator Marshall, Senator Moran, thanks for your work putting this together. It's great to be with so many Kansans who are part of Bob Dole's family. I first met Bob Dole in the mid-1980s as a young kid at the Kansas State Fair. And we all have that image of Bob Dole at the Kansas State Fair, reading Kansan after Kansan after Kansan. You got the sense he got energy from those experiences, where for many it can be draining to be in groups of people. He absorbed that energy and got stronger because of it. And maybe it's because of that history when Russell lifted him up and wrapped their arms around him after his injuries, but he always loved people. And what struck me then as a small town rural Kansas kid is here was this ordinary small town Kansas kid who'd gone on to do extraordinary things. And of course Bob Dole was anything but ordinary, but he represented all of us as Kansans, and he was a role model. And so many of us saw him as somebody that we looked up to. He was larger than life, and he was inspirational. And that role modeling continued when you come to Congress and he wraps his arms around you, no matter what political party you're from, no matter who you are, you're part of Bob Dole's family. And I think that's maybe why we've been so blessed with a great Kansas delegation of folks that also never forget where they're from, who have been selfless leaders. It's part of our Kansas tradition because Bob Dole led the way and showed us that example. And I was struck even in his last years. You all remember, it might have been 2018, a few years ago, when he came back and still did a 105 county tour and sat there in every little spot in every county in Kansas and listened to every ma and pa come up, and they all had a personal connection to him, and they all had a story, and he loved it. It wasn't a burden, it was a joy. And what a blessing to have someone who could role model that behavior for Kansans, and it's just so uniquely Kansas. And to be here at the World War II Memorial, of course, that we've all described as the place that Bob Dole built, that he symbolized, that he sacrificed, as everyone in his generation did. To be here, I will always think of Bob Dole. I'll never drive by this space or walk in this space and not think personally about Bob Dole. And I'll think about what he meant to America. And America is a stronger nation because of Bob Dole. It's a safer nation. It's a kinder nation, and it's a more just nation because of Bob Dole. And Bob Dole, of course, was a soldier. He was a statesman. He was a senator. But most of all, he was a Kansan. And he was my hero, and he was our friend. God bless Bob Dole. And now, Senator Emeritus, the great senator, who so embodied Bob Dole's spirit and his leadership, Senator Pat Roberts.
Well, thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you, Roger, for getting this organized, and both you and Jerry. And thank you to the delegation for being here. I was sitting there thinking, when you were making your remarks, that if Bob was up there right now, he would be sitting right up there, and I would be going up and down the buses. And people will get off the buses and say, well, hi, Pat, where's Bob? And he would be sitting right up there talking to each and every one of them. I don't care whether it's from Alabama, certainly from Kansas, but I don't know, Jerry, how many times we did that, but it was quite a few. I first met Bob Dole when my dad called me and said, would you like to meet a young man in the Congress that I think has the most potential of anybody I've ever seen? My dad was the Republican National Chairman under Eisenhower and state chairman in Kansas, and obviously knew Bob Dole. I was stationed at Quantico, and so I came down. I said I took the Friday off, and well, I didn't take it off. I asked to be excused to take it off, and came down, and Dad took me over to the Cannon Building. Walked in, and I met Bill Katz, and I met Bill Taggart, and a lot of people that have since gone to their reward. We were pretty close when I became involved in politics. And I met the man and I said, my gosh, here's a movie star. He has the movie star good looks. He had such a warm greeting about him. He made you feel like you've known him forever. That's the small town kind of thing that we all have in Kansas and sometimes take for granted. I really didn't see him again until I was out in Arizona trying to be the William Allen White of Arizona, or the Paul Harvey of Arizona. That didn't work out so well, but it was a good experience. Frank Carlson called me, the senior senator at that particular time. Frank Carlson is the man that worked with 3 others to establish the prayer breakfast, the National Prayer Breakfast, and all the prayer breakfasts we have in the House and Senate. Not many people know about that. Maybe it would give people some heart and some positive feelings if they knew. He was working with 3 people: Dwight David Eisenhower, Billy Graham, and Conrad Hilton. He was quite a guy. I was very privileged to be his chief of staff. And so when the senator determined he wasn't going to run, he asked his former chief of staff, George Stafford, my dad, Huck Boyd, several others in the room. I was in the room off to the side, being a staffer. And they were talking about the fact that he would retire and who would replace him. There was a lot of talk about Garner Shriver at that particular time, being the senior member of Congress. But everybody knew it was Bob Dole. And so it was Senator Carlson who called him up and indicated he was going to retire, and said he would support him that there wasn't any choice. He had to run. Well, of course, Bob was ready to run, and that was that. That was history. When I was first elected to the Congress, things were a little different back then. We didn't have the security. We didn't have the, trench warfare that we see today, hindering what we're trying to get done, if we can ever decide what we're going to get done. Rightly or wrongly, the Congress reflects the balkanization we have in our country today, and it's unfortunate that we are here at this particular time. We were very fortunate to have a man like Bob Dole lead us in the Senate and really get things done. But I can remember so many wonderful stories. When I first became a member, why, I was in a position where I could play a few little pranks on the Dole staff, and the Dole staff would always try to reciprocate. And for some reason, people thought I sounded a little bit like Bob. So one day, I just picked up the phone and I called Wolford. I knew his number. I said, "Where's my speech?" And he says, "Well, sir, I don't know, but I'll find out." "I only have 5 minutes. You better get the speech over here." Hung up the phone. Sheila Burke and Claude Alexander and everybody on the floor went nuts, and so did Bill. And so he called Taggart. Taggart didn't know about any speech. So I waited about 7 more minutes, picked up the phone again and said, "I'm giving up on my speech. And I've got to talk to you all about getting things there on time." Put down the phone. Then I went back to my staff, and I said, "If any Dole staffer calls me for the rest of the week, I'm not in." Bob Dole was the kind of guy that when he was a leader in the Senate and I was in the House, I had so much more, I'm not going to say power, but so much more ability to get things done, because they assumed that what I was for, Bob was for. I never told them the difference. I certainly didn't tell Bob. I'll give you an example. Department of Labor and the EPA under, I can't remember which administration it was. It might have been Obama. I think it was Clinton. But they had determined that they were going to make a statement about rural fugitive dust. Jerry knows what we're talking about, and some of the things that happened with the alphabet agencies back here. And so they stopped the Kansas wheat harvest. Boom. Nobody does that. Nobody would even think about doing that, but they did that. Well, as you can imagine, it raised a hell of a lot of dust and hell out in Kansas. Our phones were ringing off the, constant ringing. What's going on? Pat, what on earth is going on? I knew there was a meeting at the Department of Agriculture with all the farm groups, and then also the Department of Labor, EPA, and the USDA. Hopped in my car, went down, double parked, went in the room. It wasn't the big first building, the second building. They have an auditorium in there. I just opened up the door. I said, "I'm Pat Roberts. I'm a member of the House Agriculture Committee. And I just want you to know that there's a meeting at 2 o'clock with Bob Dole, and I've never seen the leader more upset. He is absolutely livid. So if all you folks up there on the dais could meet with Bob and some of us at 2 o'clock, we ought to do that." And left. And then I drove my car. At that time, you could park up there on the apron, and went in to see Bob. I asked Sheila Burke, "How's Bob?" And Sheila said, "How is he always?" And so I went over there and I tugged on the back of his coat, and he looked around and says, "What's going on?" I said, "They stopped the Kansas wheat harvest." "What?" "They stopped the Kansas wheat harvest, and sir, you have a meeting at 2 o'clock with the people responsible. Take care of it." So Tag and Bill Wolford and I were trying to figure out what room. We were going to get several others in the room as well. Then I got a call from my office and said the USDA just called. No, it was the Department of Labor that just called and said that won't be necessary. We've lifted that. Stop. It's going to be okay. That just indicates to you what you can do when, of course, I called a meeting and not even telling Dole that was going to happen. A lot of stories like that. Were we here today, if Bob were here today, he would be sitting right up there. Buses would be coming in. And if the temperature was right, just like it is today, he would lean over and say, "Pat, let's get this done." So I think it's time for me to close with the thought that I had on Sunday when I learned of Bob's passing. And I said the sun didn't come up very high that day in losing one of our favorite sons. We have two, Bob Dole and his hero, Ike. And I want to specifically mention that when he talked to the World War II veterans and Vietnam veterans and Korean veterans, he would say, "Isn't it a shame that we don't have a memorial for Dwight David Eisenhower, for Ike?" So when people came to the memorial, they could go to another memorial for Ike and salute their commanding officer. He not only helped build this, he helped build the Eisenhower Memorial, which took us 24 years, which is just down the road down here on Independence Avenue, making it possible for any World War II veteran or any veteran to go up to that memorial and salute their commanding officer. He's an amazing man. We have not lost him. He is here with us. When he passed in his sleep, I think probably the good Lord came down and touched Bob and said, "Bob, it's time for you to come with me. There are a lot of World War II veterans that like to visit with you. There are a lot of people from Kansas and all over the country that would like to visit with you. A lot of farmers and ranchers who are still complaining. And a lot of pet lovers. And a lot of people who are disabled, who were disabled. They're not disabled now. It's time to come and visit with them. And you have a great deal of people that will certainly have you in your hearts here on earth." And so he went with the Lord. And I want to thank God and the Lord in behalf of us all for enabling us to live in a time and a space where we got to know such a great man. Thank you.